I never believed in Bigfoot until one saved my best friend's life in the Montana wilderness. It happened 3 years after we came home from military service, and I know how insane that sounds, but it's something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. My friend and I had served overseas together, same unit, 2 full tours, the kind of bond you only build after going through hell with someone. During those long desert nights when we couldn't sleep, we used to talk about the things we'd do once we got home, and one promise we made was to go backpacking together someday. No missions, no gear, no one shooting at us, just 2 friends out in the mountains. It took almost 3 years to make that happen. Life got complicated once we were back. We both had families to fix, jobs to find, and a civilian life to figure out. We planned and canceled that trip more times than I can count. Work schedules clashed, kids got sick, life got in the way. But finally, that September, we made it happen. 3 days in the Montana backcountry. We picked a remote stretch of the Bitterroot Range, the kind of place where you could hike for days without seeing another soul, exactly the wilderness we dreamed of. We weren't careless, we studied maps for weeks, checked forecasts, planned every route, packed more than enough supplies, and made sure someone knew where we were going. Both of us were trained in survival, and we'd grown up hunting and camping in country just like that. We respected the mountains, and we weren't there to take risks. The weather was perfect early September, cool mornings, warm days. When we got to the trailhead at dawn, the summer crowds were gone. Our truck was the only one there. We threw on our packs and stepped into the woods, the air crisp and full of pine. Sunlight filtered through the trees, and everything felt calm, peaceful. The first day went exactly as planned. We covered about 12 miles through beautiful terrain, rolling hills of pine, meadows full of late wildflowers, clear streams. We stopped for lunch by a waterfall, eating sandwiches while the water tumbled over mossy rocks, and that night we camped beside a creek, falling asleep to the sound of running water. We sat around the fire for hours, talking about life, work, family, old friends, just 2 soldiers finally breathing again. The next morning started just as perfectly. We packed up at sunrise and kept hiking through country that looked almost unreal. Endless pine forest, granite peaks glowing gold in the morning light, meadows still blooming. We spotted a herd of elk, 20 or so, grazing in the distance, watched them for a while, then moved on. Lunch was by another creek. We joked about turning this into a yearly thing, maybe bringing the kids next time. The afternoon stayed warm but mild, perfect hiking weather. We followed a trail that ran beside a stream, planning to camp again within a couple hours. Around 4 in the afternoon, after about 6 hours of hiking, we rounded a bend and froze. 40 yards ahead, standing in the middle of the trail, was a mountain lion. A big one, had to be close to 150 pounds. Its golden fur rippled with muscle, tail twitching slowly like a cat watching prey. It had seen us long before we saw it. Its yellow eyes locked on us, ears forward, completely focused. It wasn't surprised, it was waiting. Training took over instantly. Make yourself look big, don't run. Whatever you do, don't run. We lifted our arms, spread our jackets wide, and started backing away slowly, never taking our eyes off it. My friend raised his trekking pole high, trying to make himself look bigger and more threatening. I spread my arms and held my jacket out like wings, inching backward step by careful step. The mountain lion didn't budge. It stood squarely in the trail, eyes locked on us like a predator that had all the time in the world. When we stepped back, it stepped forward, matching us move for move. 5 minutes became 10. My arms burned from holding them overhead, my shoulders getting hot and tired. 15 minutes, sweat trickling down my back despite the cool mountain air. 20 minutes, and we were still retreating slowly while the cat watched us, patient and unhurried. My friend's breathing grew ragged. I could see sweat soaking his shirt, his face gone pale, his hands shaking from holding his pole up so long. I wanted to tell him to hang on, to stay calm, but we stayed silent, not a word that might rile it. Then disaster. 25 minutes in, his foot caught on something behind him. 1 second he was backing away in control, and the next, he stumbled, feet tangling, arms flailing to catch himself. For a blink, the lion's eyes met his, and then it exploded forward. I've never seen anything move that fast. In an instant, the cat closed the 40 yards and launched itself like it had been shot from a cannon. Its shoulders coiled and released, sending huge, ripping bounds across the ground. My friend was off balance and exposed. I lunged without thinking, swinging my pack at the animal and crashing into it, but it wasn't enough. The lion landed on him, claws out. I heard fabric tear and his scream cut the air, a raw, terrified sound. Claws shredded his chest and shoulder, teeth sank into his forearm, and blood came fast. I kicked the cat with my boot, struck it with a heavy, rotten branch like a bat in a desperate, blind fury, and finally it released him, retreating with a terrible hiss, lips curled back to show teeth stained with his blood. I shoved my friend backward and slid between him and the cat. Seeing his wounds up close made my stomach drop deep parallel gashes across his chest and shoulder. Fabric shredded, a biting puncture where teeth had pierced his forearm and blood poured freely. The worst was the slash under his right jaw, not directly into a major vessel, thank God, but close enough that I could see something pulsing under torn skin. An inch left, and he would have been gone. He was conscious, but slipping into shock. Wide-eyed, pale, pupils blown, breathing shallow and rapid. His good hand clamped at his chest, trying to stem the flow, but there was too much. The lion paced 6 meters away, tail twitching, clearly scenting blood and unwilling to let us go. Hands shaking, I tore open the first aid kit and forced myself to work on the neck wound first, all the while keeping the animal in sight and praying we could hold him together long enough to get help. It was the worst part, the bleeding was too fast. The gauze soaked through almost as soon as I pressed it down. Blood poured down his collar, his lips losing color, turning pale, almost white. He muttered something I couldn't make out, maybe my name, maybe his wife's. The mountain lion crept closer, now less than 15 feet away. It lunged forward a few steps, then backed off again, testing us, gauging our reaction. I shouted at it, waving the branch, trying to look bigger, but it didn't care anymore. It had tasted blood. It had patience. It knew it could wait us out. The sun was sinking fast, maybe an hour of light left. Long shadows stretched across the trees. We were miles from the trailhead, from any help at all. I tried to do the math in my head, how long it would take to carry him out. 6 hours? 7? And that was assuming I could even lift him 90 kilos of dead weight over rocky ground in the dark. He'd bleed out long before we got halfway. He needed a hospital, surgery, blood transfusions, antibiotics, things I didn't have out there, just a first aid kit and bandages already soaked through. The cat stepped closer, 10 feet now. I could see every detail of its face, the white fur around its muzzle, the twitch of its whiskers, the complete lack of fear in its golden eyes. It was calculating, patient, waiting for the moment. My friend's eyes were closed, his head tilted to the side. For a second, I thought he was gone. His pulse was weak, fluttery, but still there. The lion crouched, muscles tightening, ready to spring. I raised the branch, knowing it wouldn't be enough. Knowing I was about to die fighting a mountain lion with a stick, but there was no way I was letting it take him without a fight. We'd survived 2 tours together. I wasn't losing him to a wildcat in the middle of Montana. Then I heard a deep, violent crash from the forest to our right. It wasn't the sound of an animal moving through brush. It sounded like a truck plowing through the woods. Branches snapped like gunshots, small trees breaking, and heavy, thunderous footsteps that I felt in my chest more than I heard. Boom, boom. The ground trembled with each impact. My first thought was grizzly. That was it, we were finished. There was no way we could survive both a mountain lion and a grizzly bear. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Then came the scream. Not a roar, a scream. High-pitched, yet deep and echoing, like someone had taken a human voice and amplified it through massive speakers. The sound hit a frequency that made my teeth ache, my vision blur, and something ancient in my brain ignite with sheer terror. I'd never heard anything like it, not in these mountains, not in the desert, not in combat, not anywhere. It wasn't an animal sound I knew. The mountain lion turned its head toward the noise. Its ears flattened tight against its skull. Every muscle in its body went rigid. For the first time since this started, I saw fear in those yellow eyes. And then something burst through the tree line, something my brain couldn't even process at first. It was too big, its shape wrong, its movement impossible. It ran upright on 2 legs, but it wasn't human. It couldn't be. No human could be that massive. The thing was covered head to toe in dark brown hair, thick and tangled, longer around the shoulders and back, shorter on the chest and face. It stood at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. Its shoulders were enormous, nearly 4 feet across, with a barrel chest and long, muscular arms that hung almost to its knees. Its face looked like something caught halfway between man and ape, as if evolution had stopped mid-process, or as if someone had merged features from both into one impossible being. It charged the mountain lion, unleashing another piercing scream, louder and more powerful than before. The sound wasn't just loud, it hurt, physically, like an ice pick driven straight through my eardrums. The cat didn't hesitate, it didn't fight. It spun and bolted into the woods like its life depended on it, crashing through brush until the sound faded into nothing. Then the creature stopped where the lion had stood, turned slowly, and looked straight at us. I couldn't move, couldn't think. Every rational thought I'd ever had clashed violently with what I was seeing. What stood barely 20 feet away wasn't supposed to exist. Bigfoot wasn't real. Sasquatch was a campfire story, a legend told to scare kids, and yet, it was right there breathing hard from the sprint, massive and solid and absolutely real. Up close, it was even more terrifying. 8 to maybe 10 feet tall, shoulders broad enough to make its head seem small. Its arms were thick and muscular, covered in coarse brown hair. The hands were enormous, fingers nearly a foot long, tipped with dark, curved nails that looked more like claws. Its legs were shorter than a man's, but thick as tree trunks. The fur across its body was darker along the back and shoulders, lighter on the chest and face, matted with dirt and bits of broken twigs, like it had been moving through dense brush for hours. But the face was the worst part. It was too human. The eyes were set forward, not to the sides like an ape's, and they were dark brown, almost black, filled with an unmistakable intelligence. Not animal cunning, human awareness. The nose was flat, but not ape-like, something between man and primate. The mouth was wide, the lips thin, and when it breathed I saw teeth, not fangs, but disturbingly human teeth. A heavy brow ridge shadowed eyes that felt aware. The forehead sloped back, but the whole structure was human enough to make my skin crawl. It stared at us with that intelligent gaze, not with curiosity, but understanding. It was thinking, assessing, deciding. I could see it working through the situation. One man down, bleeding out, another standing guard, the predator gone. What next? My friend groaned behind me, barely conscious, still bleeding but alive. The sound drew the creature's attention. It took one slow step toward us. An instinct took over. I moved between it and my friend, lifting the broken branch with both hands, even though they were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. It was a pitiful weapon, and we both knew it. This thing could tear me apart without effort, snap my spine like a twig, crush my skull with one hand. But I wasn't backing down. Not after everything. The creature stopped and tilted its head, almost like it was puzzled or trying to understand. The motion was so human, it made the hair on my neck stand up. Then it made a sound, not a scream this time, but a deep, low rumble, almost questioning, coming from somewhere deep in its chest. It wasn't hostile. It sounded like concern. Then it lifted one of its long, muscled arms and pointed not at me, but at my friend lying behind me. Its huge finger extended, black nails glinting in the fading light. Then it touched its own neck, right at the spot where my friend's wound was. It just stood there like that, pointing at my friend, touching its own throat, and looked at me with what I swear was intent. At first, I didn't understand. My mind was still struggling to process that this thing even existed. But then it hit me, the gesture was deliberate, purposeful, too clear to be random. It was trying to communicate. It was trying to communicate, not threatening us, not warning us, but telling me something. It understood that my friend was hurt. It knew exactly where he was hurt. It wanted to help. My hands moved on instinct, like my body was operating on autopilot while my brain struggled to catch up. I dropped the branch. I grabbed gauze from the first aid kit, pressing my shaking hands against my friend's neck wound. The creature rumbled deep in its chest, a low, approving sound, louder this time. It stood there watching me work but didn't come closer. When I pressed harder and the bleeding finally began to slow a little, it let out 2 short grunts, almost like it was saying, "Good, keep going." The sun was fading fast, the forest sinking into shadow. The temperature dropped. I knew we couldn't move him. He'd lost too much blood, his body too unstable. Even if I could lift him, which I couldn't, moving him would tear open his wounds and finish him. We were stuck there for the night, like it or not. The creature remained about 10 feet away, watching. I didn't know what else to do, so I tried talking to it, unsure if it would understand. My voice shook. "Thank you," I said hoarsely. "He's hurt bad. I don't know what to do." It studied me for a long moment, those dark eyes locked on my face as if reading me. Then it gave a short, deep growl, not a threat, but an acknowledgement before turning and walking back into the trees. Its movements were strangely graceful for something so massive. Then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness. For a moment I thought that was it, that we were alone again. A part of me even wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing, if the stress and adrenaline had made me hallucinate. But then I heard faint cracks of branches in the distance, the sound of heavy footsteps fading through the forest. It was real. It had been real. I wrapped my friend in my jacket and the emergency blanket from the kit, trying to keep him warm. I checked his pulse every few minutes, weak, fluttering, too fast, too uneven. He drifted in and out, mumbling nonsense, calling for his wife, asking where we were, not understanding. The light was almost gone. I managed to build a small fire with trembling hands, feeding it bits of dry wood I could reach without leaving his side. The flames were small and cold, but it was something, better than nothing. Then I heard it again, the sound of heavy movement in the trees, the same deep, deliberate steps. The creature was coming back. It stepped into the firelight, carrying an armful of leaves and plants, broad, flat leaves like wild cabbage, each the size of a dinner plate, along with thick, green moss that glowed faintly, even in the dim light. This time, it came closer, right to the edge of the fire. Under the flickering glow, I saw it clearly for the first time. The fur around its face and hands was streaked with gray. It was old, very old. Scars crossed its arms and chest, pale white lines beneath the hair. One ear was torn. This being had survived countless battles, countless winters. It dropped the bundle of plants within my reach, then pointed at the moss and at my friend's wound. It pressed its huge hands together, fingers closing as if to show me what to do. I hesitated. I didn't know what this stuff was. It could be poisonous, could make things worse, but my friend was dying. The bandages were soaked through again, blood seeping from the edges. This thing had saved us from the mountain lion. Now it had brought us something, medicine maybe. Maybe it knew something I didn't. Maybe this was our only chance. Carefully, I peeled back the bloody bandages. The wound looked even worse in the firelight, deep and ragged, edges turning a sickly gray. I touched the moss. It was cool and damp, with a strong herbal scent almost like mint, but sharper, medicinal. Gently, as carefully as I could, I pressed it over my friend's wound and held the bandage down. The creature gave another approving rumble, that same deep sound from its chest, then did something that stunned me. It sat down on the other side of the fire, cross-legged, like a person settling in to stay a while. The firelight flickered across its face, revealing details I'd missed before. The silver hairs weren't just around its face, they ran throughout its fur, streaking the dark brown. Its hands were scarred and calloused, the thick fingers surprisingly deft. This wasn't some mindless beast. This was something else entirely. Time crawled. I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my friend's breathing, kept feeding the fire, kept watching the creature across from me. It didn't move, just sat there like a sentry, eyes sweeping the darkness beyond our small circle of light. Every time I looked at it, its gaze was alert, scanning the forest. It was keeping watch, protecting us. Around midnight, I tried speaking to it again. I didn't know if it would respond. I didn't even know if it could, but the silence was suffocating, and I needed to do something. "Why are you helping us?" I asked. It stared at me for a long time. The firelight reflected in its eyes, making them glow amber in the dark. Then it lifted one massive fist and tapped it over its chest, right where a heart would be. A sound came from its throat, a harsh, low, gravelly voice, like stones grinding underwater. It was the voice of someone who hadn't spoken in years, forcing itself to remember how. And then came the words, clear, unmistakable, in English. "You can talk." It struggled with the next sounds, pulling them from some deep, unused place. Its mouth worked clumsily, its lips and tongue clearly not built for human speech, but it managed. "Help! Hurt! Please!" Something inside me cracked. Tears rolled down my face before I even realized it. This impossible thing, this nightmare creature was trying to help us, because it understood pain, because it couldn't just stand by and watch, because, despite looking like something out of legend, it had more compassion than most people I'd ever met. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't know what we'd do without you. I don't know if he'd even be alive without you." It nodded slowly, a human gesture, then turned its gaze back to the darkness. Something had changed. A barrier had broken. We'd communicated. We understood each other. I wasn't alone anymore. Around 2 a.m, new sounds rose from the forest, rustling in the brush, movement circling the camp just beyond the firelight. Shadows shifted between the trees. Eyes reflected the flames, many pairs, yellow and green, moving in the dark. My heart hammered, adrenaline flooding back. I knew what they were before I even saw them. 4, maybe 5 wolves, drawn by the smell of blood, moving just out of sight, testing our defenses, looking for weakness. My hand went to the knife at my belt. It was useless against a pack. I was exhausted. My friend was unconscious and helpless, and now this. The creature slowly rose to its full height, deliberate and towering. Even knowing it was on our side, the sight of it standing to its maximum size was terrifying. It had to be close to 9 feet tall. It stood up to its full height and let out a low growl so deep I felt it in my bones more than I heard it. It was a warning, a challenge. The wolves froze. Now I could see them more clearly as they paced the edges of the firelight, lean, gray, black shapes, hungry and desperate. They'd been expecting an easy meal, but this was something they'd never encountered before. A towering, powerful creature that didn't fit into anything they understood about the world. One wolf peeled away from the pack, inching closer, testing its courage. The creature took 2 massive strides toward it and unleashed that same piercing scream it had given when it first appeared. The wolf's tail snapped between its legs, and it slunk back into the darkness with a whimper. Another tried to circle from a different angle, thinking it could slip by while the first distracted the giant. But the creature spun faster than anything that size should be able to move, lunging a few steps in its direction. The wolf yelped and bolted. Within seconds, the whole pack scattered, crashing through the underbrush, putting as much distance as they could between themselves and the unknown. The creature returned to the fire, looked at me, and made a hand gesture like brushing dust off its palms, a very human, done gesture. Problem solved. No more threat. Then it sat back down, but not cross-legged like before. Now it leaned against a tree trunk, positioned so it could see in every direction, nothing able to sneak up on us. It was thinking ahead, calculating, watching. The rest of the night crawled by. My friend's breathing stayed shallow but steady. The fever he'd spiked in the night didn't worsen, but it didn't improve either. The moss seemed to be helping. The bleeding had slowed to a trickle. Not enough, but enough to keep him alive for now. As the first streaks of daylight filtered through the trees, turning the sky from black to gray to pale blue, he was still alive, still breathing, but weak. His skin was hot under my hand, the wound angry and red despite the moss. Infection was setting in. We were running out of time. The creature rose as the sun came up, stretching its massive frame until its joints cracked in the morning silence. It stared at my friend for a long moment, then looked at me. It pointed at him, then raised its huge arms as if to cradle something. The meaning was clear. Carry him? It gave one slow nod. Carry. Go. It gestured in the direction I was pretty sure led back to the trailhead. Maybe it knew the area. Maybe it just knew we needed help. Either way, I wasn't going to argue. I helped it lift my friend as gently as possible. It cradled him to its chest with astonishing care for something so large, its enormous arms forming a cradle under his head and neck, keeping his body steady and supported. It adjusted its grip until it found a position that didn't put pressure on the wounds. Then it looked at me and snorted softly, as if to say, "Ready?" We started moving through the forest. I couldn't believe how easily it carried him. No stumbling, no tripping over roots or stones, no jostling him more than necessary. It threaded through the trees along paths I couldn't even see, stepping over obstacles without looking, ducking under branches that would have smacked me in the face. It moved through the wilderness like it was part of it, like it knew every root and stone. We were moving faster than I could on my own, even without carrying anyone. I had to jog to keep up. About an hour into the trek, my friend began to mumble deliriously. The fever spiked, his skin burning hot even in the cool morning air. He spoke nonsense, called out names of people who weren't there, asked where we were. The creature stopped immediately, kneeling on a bed of soft moss and laying him down with a gentleness that stunned me. It examined the wound with those massive hands, every motion precise and careful. In the daylight, the injury looked even worse, red and swollen, blistering around the edges, angry red streaks creeping outward under the skin. The infection was spreading despite the moss. We needed real antibiotics, real medical care, things I didn't have out here. The creature made a sound I'd never heard from it before, a low, rumbling noise full of pain, almost like a groan of despair. I saw it in its eyes, worry, maybe even fear. It knew the moss wasn't enough anymore. It knew we were running out of time. Then, without a sound, it slipped into the trees, moving faster than I'd ever seen. I stayed with my friend, trying to keep him comfortable, checking his pulse, wiping the sweat from his forehead with my sleeve. 10 minutes later, it was back, moving with quick, deliberate strides, carrying an armload of plants I didn't recognize. Strips of bark with a reddish inner layer and rough, brittle exterior. A handful of broad green leaves like something from a deciduous tree, and a cluster of small dark berries hanging from a thin stem. It sat beside us and did something that turned my stomach. It put the bark in its mouth and started chewing, grinding the fibers with its teeth. I could hear the wood tearing and mixing with saliva. After 2 minutes, it spat a wet, reddish-brown pulp into its huge palm, then carefully pressed the mash into the deepest wounds on my friend's chest. My friend screamed a raw, piercing cry that echoed through the forest. His whole body arched, his good hand clawing at the dirt. The creature flinched back for a second, as if startled by his pain, but then I saw the conflict on its face. It knew this hurt him, but it also knew it had to be done. "Please," I whispered, "do it. He needs it." It nodded once and pressed the rest of the chewed bark into the wound, then laid the wide green leaves over the pulp like a poultice, using the outer bark strips as makeshift ties. Its massive fingers worked with astonishing precision and delicacy. It crushed the berries in its palm and rubbed the juice around the edges of the injury. I had no idea what any of it was, but it clearly did. When it was finished, my friend collapsed back onto the ground. The screaming stopped. His breathing grew steadier. Then the creature lifted him again, even more carefully this time, making sure not to disturb the poultice. "Fast," it rumbled. We moved quickly now, nearly running. Its long strides ate up the ground, but whenever I fell too far behind, it slowed, waiting for me to catch up, never leaving me. It was matching my limits, pacing itself to my speed. By mid-morning, about 3 hours after we'd started moving, we stopped beside a stream. Water clear as glass rushed over smooth stones worn down by centuries. The creature set my friend gently on the bank, splashed cold water onto his face, cupped its huge hands and poured water over his forehead and neck, trying to cool the fever. My friend's eyes fluttered open. He looked up at the creature, not afraid, just bewildered, like someone caught between a dream and waking reality. "Angel," he murmured. The sound the creature made then was almost like a chuckle. It breathed softly through its nose, shoulders shaking faintly, almost as if it found the word angel amusing. Then it helped me lift my friend's head, steadying him with one massive hand while I held a bottle to his lips. He took a few small sips, coughed, then drank again before his eyes slid closed and he drifted back into unconsciousness. I took the chance to ask what had been on my mind since the night before. There was something I needed to understand. "Do you have a name?" The creature studied me for a long time, those dark eyes searching my face as if weighing how much to share. When it finally spoke, the words came slowly, as though pulled from somewhere deep and old. Old. Very old. It tapped its chest with a long finger. Alone. Long time. The weight of those words hit me like a heavy blanket. The loneliness in them, the quiet sorrow, the finality. "You're alone," I said softly. "For a long time." It nodded once, gaze never leaving mine. "Alone. Long time." When I asked how long, it seemed to struggle with the concept. It pointed toward the sky, traced a circle with one finger like the path of the sun, then spread both hands, opening all its fingers again and again, years, decades, maybe centuries, maybe longer. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry, that must be hard. It made a small sound, part sigh, part growl, then shrugged. A strikingly human gesture, acceptance, resignation, as if loneliness had long ago become simply part of its existence. Far now, it murmured. Those two words carried so much. Distance, isolation, a quiet understanding that some things can't be changed, only endured. We rested for a few minutes. I shared what little food I had left: jerky, trail mix, a few energy bars. The creature turned the strip of jerky over in its massive hands, sniffed it, bit off a piece, chewed slowly, testing the flavor, then gave a short snort of approval before eating more. The trail mix seemed to puzzle it, too many different things in one handful. It picked out a couple of M&Ms, studied them, then tried one. Its eyes widened slightly in surprise. One by one, it ate all the M&Ms first, savoring each piece, then moved on to the nuts and dried fruit. It was such a simple, strangely human moment. Two beings from entirely different worlds, sharing a meal in the middle of the wilderness. It felt important somehow, like we were building something together. Trust, maybe even understanding. A fragile bridge between worlds that had long forgotten each other. When we were ready to move again, the creature did something unexpected. It took one of my empty water bottles, walked to the stream, and carefully filled it, making sure not to spill a drop. Then it tucked the bottle into a pouch it fashioned from bark and leaves, securing it against my friend's side. It was thinking ahead, planning, strategizing, ensuring we'd have water later. Then we set off once more. It lifted my friend in its arms, holding him close, and we moved deeper into the forest, following paths only it could see, heading, I prayed, toward help. By early afternoon, my friend's condition worsened despite everything the creature had done. His skin had turned a grayish pallor, the kind that terrified me more than blood ever could. His breathing was shallow, strained. Every inhale seemed like work. The infection was winning. At our pace, we were maybe 3 hours from the trailhead, and I couldn't shake the fear that 3 hours might be too long. The creature quickened its pace, urgency in every stride. Soon it was nearly running, its long legs covering ground, at a speed that left me gasping for air, my legs burning, sweat soaking through my shirt despite the cold. Every time I fell too far behind, it glanced back and let out a deep, rumbling sound: encouragement, reassurance. Keep going, almost there, stay close. At one point, the path opened suddenly. My boot caught on a rock and I went down hard. My knee smashed against the ground, pain shooting up my leg. My palms tore open as I caught myself, skin scraped raw. I gritted my teeth and tried to push up again, but my legs trembled beneath me. I lay there for a moment, exhausted, wondering if I could even stand. The creature immediately stopped, gently setting my friend down on a soft bed of moss. Then it turned back to where I'd fallen and extended a massive hand toward me, palm up, an unmistakable offer of help. I grasped it. The grip was gentle despite its obvious strength, its fingers easily wrapping around my entire hand, and then some. It pulled me to my feet as though I weighed nothing, as though lifting me cost no more effort than picking up a stick. Then it patted my shoulder, the kind of gesture you give a friend who's struggling. Encouragement. Comfort. You're strong. Keep going. It wasn't just a look. I could see in those dark eyes that it meant it. This thing respected me. It respected the fact that I was still moving, still trying, even though I was terrified, exhausted, and completely powerless next to it. Weary and slow compared to its strength, but still fighting. That simple gesture, that light pat on the shoulder, nearly undid me. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. I wiped them away quickly, embarrassed, but the creature only nodded, understanding exactly what I felt. We moved on. My knee throbbed with every step. My scraped palms burned, but I kept walking. The creature kept glancing back, checking that I was still there, never going so far ahead that I lost sight of it. It never left me behind. My friend's breathing grew weaker, his chest shuddering with each inhale. The sound terrified me. I'd heard that sound before overseas, the sound people make just before they die. The creature seemed to recognize it too. It kept looking down at him, constantly adjusting its hold to keep him comfortable. I saw fear on its face, real fear. This being that had fought off a mountain lion and stared down a pack of wolves without flinching was afraid my friend was about to die. Around 2 in the afternoon, maybe 2.5 hours from the trailhead, my friend stopped breathing. One moment the rasping breath was there, the next silence. The creature froze, then quickly but carefully laid him on the ground and turned to me with wide eyes, panic. I dropped to my knees beside my friend, checked for a pulse. Nothing. His lips were blue, his skin cold. No. I started chest compressions, counting under my breath, trying to remember training. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. The creature stood over us, silent. I went through another round, and another. My friend's chest rose and fell under my hands, but he didn't breathe on his own. "Come on," I begged. "Come on, not now, not when we're this close." The creature let out a low, urgent sound, then gently pushed me aside. It placed one enormous hand on my friend's chest, directly over his heart, and pressed down light but firm, measured. Once, twice, 3 times. Then it bent down, covering my friend's mouth and nose with its own, and breathed. 1 breath, 2 breaths. My friend's chest lifted, then lifted again. Then he exhaled hard, trembling, and began to breathe on his own, shallow and weak, but breathing. The creature sat back on its heels, relief etched across its face. It looked at me and nodded. "We're okay. He's okay for now." But we both knew we were out of time. It lifted my friend once more carefully than ever, holding him as if he were made of glass. Then it began to run, truly run, gliding over the forest floor faster than I thought possible. I ran after it, ignoring the pain in my knee, the fire in my lungs, everything except the giant form ahead of me. About 45 minutes later, I started to hear something. Voices, human voices, still distant but drawing closer. People on the trail. The creature heard them too. It stopped, set my friend down behind a fallen log, and gently pushed me down beside him. Then it pressed one massive finger to its lips, a universal gesture. Silence. I understood. It couldn't be seen. It couldn't risk anyone knowing it existed. Yet we were so close to help, so close to saving my friend. I could see the struggle in its face, torn between staying hidden and making sure we were rescued. I made the decision for both of us. "Go," I whispered. "We'll be okay now." "They'll help us," I whispered. "You've done enough, more than enough." It looked at my friend, then at me. The hesitation was plain on its face. It didn't want to leave before making sure we were safe. It didn't want to believe we'd be okay on our own. "Please," I said. "You can't be seen, but we'll make it from here, I promise. Because of you, we'll make it." The creature still hesitated. Then it reached out, touched my friend's forehead one last time, holding its hand there for several seconds as if saying goodbye, as if checking one final time to be sure he was still breathing. Then it looked at me and spoke more words at once than I'd ever heard it say before. He fight strong. Both fight strong." Then it touched my shoulder again, that same gentle pat. "Men help men. You remember?" it said. "I will," I promised. "I'll never forget, I swear." It nodded, seeming satisfied with that. Then it looked around once more, listening to the voices growing closer. Only a few minutes now, it turned back to the trees, to the darkness. But before it disappeared completely, it stopped and looked at us one last time. It lifted one massive hand, not quite a wave, more like a farewell, a blessing. Then it melted into the forest like smoke, as if it had never been there at all. I waited about 30 seconds, giving it time to slip away, to be safe. Then I started shouting as loud as I could for help. Within minutes, hikers found us, a couple in their 50s, experienced outdoors people. They took one look at my friend and immediately pulled out a satellite phone, calling for a medevac while opening their well-stocked first aid kit. They asked how it happened, how we'd survived out here, how the wounds had been treated so well. I clung to the story that popped into my head. "A mountain lion attacked," I told them. "I fought it off with a stick. We camped here overnight. I used what wilderness medicine I knew. My friend was in critical condition, but still hanging on." They didn't question me further. Why would they? The evidence was all around: the wounds, the blood, the exhaustion. They had no reason to suspect anything unusual had happened. The helicopter arrived 30 minutes later. They stabilized my friend enough to transport him and flew him out. The hikers helped me back to the trailhead, letting me lean on them when my legs finally gave out, and guided me to my truck. I sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes before starting the engine. Just sat there, staring at the trees, hoping to see that massive shape one more time, to have another chance to say thank you, to tell it I understood what it had done, what it had sacrificed, the loneliness it carried, the risks it had taken. But the forest was empty, silent, just as it always was for everyone else, as if nothing unusual had ever lived there at all. I started the truck and drove to the hospital. Most of the day is a blur. I gripped the steering wheel, trying not to think about what I'd seen, what I'd experienced, what I now knew was true but could never prove. My friend survived 3 surgeries and 5 days in intensive care. The doctors were astonished. They said someone out there must have had advanced wilderness medicine skills. They said the Picas's plants must have saved his life, slowed the infection long enough for him to reach the hospital. They wanted to know who had treated him, what plants had been used, and where I'd learned such techniques. I couldn't tell them. I just said I'd done my best with what I found. They seemed satisfied with that. They called me a hero. They told me my friend was lucky to have me out there. But I knew the truth. I hadn't saved him. Something else had. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that showed more compassion, skill, and devotion than most humans I've ever met. When my friend finally woke after the surgeries, antibiotics, and transfusions, his memories were fractured. But there was one thing he remembered. Something huge and dark watching over him. A feeling of safety in the midst of everything. The sense that something was taking care of him. He could never quite piece everything together. And I didn't push. I just told him he'd been delirious with fever, that he'd dreamed it all. We agreed without ever saying it out loud. We wouldn't tell anyone the truth. Who would believe us anyway? If someone asked, we'd say it was a guy in a costume, or some eccentric hermit living off the grid who'd helped us out. Strange, but harmless. Better that than the truth. The truth would make us sound insane. A month later, I went back alone. Hiked the same trail we'd taken. Found the place where the mountain lion had attacked us. The spot where the creature had appeared for the first time. I left supplies at the edge of the woods where it had stopped before. Jerky, plenty of it. Nuts, dried fruit, energy bars, a good camping knife, a warm blanket, things it might need, things I wanted it to have. When I came back the next day, they were gone. Not scattered like an animal had pawed through them. Gone. Taken. The blanket, the knife, the food, all of it. I like to think it knew who left them, that it understood what they meant. Thank you. I remember. I'm grateful. I never saw it again. Never found another sign. But sometimes, hiking those mountains, I swear I still hear that distant call, that cry unlike any animal I've ever known. That strange sound belonging to something that shouldn't exist. And I know we're not alone out there. I know something is watching over the wilderness. Something ancient, lonely, and kind. My friend and I are different now. We don't talk about it much, but it's always there between us. The knowledge that the impossible happened, that something that shouldn't exist saved his life. It changed us both. Now we look at the wilderness differently, with more respect, more wonder, more understanding that we are not the only beings out there, and never have been. And on quiet nights at home with my family, when the world feels small, ordinary, and familiar, I remember those black eyes across the fire, that gravelly voice saying, "Hey friend, help me," that gentle touch on my shoulder. And I know the world is larger, stranger, and more extraordinary than we allow ourselves to believe. That's my story. Believe it or not, take it or leave it. I know what happened, I know what I saw. And I know that somewhere out there in the Montana wilderness, something walks, defying everything we think we know about the world. Something that chose compassion over safety, connection over solitude, help over hiding, and I'll spend the rest of my life grateful for that choice.